All right, we're going to do some problem solving from Eureka. This is Module 3, Lesson 7. George weeded 1/5 of the garden, and Summer weeded some too. When they were finished, 2/3 of the garden still needed to be weeded. What fraction of the garden did Summer weed? All right, I'm going to start off by drawing a garden in the form of a rectangle. And I'm also going to draw that rectangle and cut into fifths, because the first part of the sentence says that George weeded 1/5 of the garden. So we're going to start off with a garden that looks like that. And I know that George weeded this much of the garden. All right. We don't have any information for Summer yet, because all it says is that Summer weeded some too, but it doesn't give me any specifics. So as I continue reading, the next sentence says, when they were finished, 2/3 of the garden still needed to be weeded. So we're going to cut thirds going this way. All right, now if this is hard to see, you can see we're just cutting it into thirds and we're just overlapping it onto the fifths. So I'm going to put it back on the fifths and continue. Now that I've superimposed my thirds on my fifths, you can see we've created these smaller units. It takes 15 of them to make a whole, so these are 15ths. Okay? So we can ask ourselves, well, if these are 15ths, then we can immediately see what 1/5 equals as 15ths. So we can see that there's 1, 2, 3 15ths that equals 1/5. So 1/5 equals 3 15ths. 2/3 of the garden would be this much of the garden. If that's hard to see, let's take a look at the 2/3. And you can see that that's 2/3 of the garden. How many 15ths is 2/3? Well, if we counted them all, and again, if that red portion's throwing you off, let's get rid of that so you can see the 2/3 clearly. And we have a total of 10 15ths, right? Okay, so here we can see that 2/3 equals 10 15ths. Now, if we sheeted it in this way, we still have a little bit of a problem here, because the original 1/5 was already taken by George. And what was left of the garden should not be what George already weeded. So what was still left that had to be weeded would include these two pieces right here, but somewhere else, because George weeded those 3 units. So we wouldn't put it, we wouldn't overlap it like that. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to move those 2 that overlapped, and we're going to move them down here like that. Okay, so how many 15ths did George weed? George weeded 3 15ths. And how many 15ths were left after both George and Summer weeded some? I'm going to mark the blue as those left. So just count how many 15ths there are there. And we can see that there is 10 15ths. And that leaves us with summer. So the question was, what fraction of the garden did summer weed? And here we can see what's left is summer. And you can clearly see that she weeded 2/15 of the garden. And that's how you do it. The only thing left we need to do is to answer this question in a complete sentence. And that would be summer weeded 2/15 of the garden. Okay, now if we were to write an equation for this problem, it would look something like this. We have one whole garden minus 1/5 minus 2/3 equals summer. We would have gotten our common denominator, which we found out was 15. So one whole is 15/15 minus 3/15 minus 10/15 and that would equal 2/15, which was the fraction of the garden that summer weeded.